Corporal Marcus Kane had served in the Terran Defense Forces for 8 years, long enough to understand humanity's reputation in galactic society. Humans were the species you called when violence was the only solution left, the beings whose capacity for ruthless combat made them simultaneously valuable as allies and terrifying as potential enemies. Marcus had internalized this reputation over years of deployments where he'd been sent specifically, because situations required aggressive response that human soldiers provided better than most species. He was good at his job, which meant he was good at controlled application of force against designated enemies. The current mission had gone catastrophically wrong. Intelligence failures led his unit into an ambush that devastated his team. Marcus survived, but he was separated, injured, and trapped in a hostile facility with damaged combat implants feeding him conflicting tactical assessments. The facility was collapsing around him, environmental systems failing, structural integrity compromised, enemy forces hunting survivors. His damaged implant screamed warnings about threats and optimal survival strategies with increasing urgency. That's when he encountered her. Kessa Varing was a Valtheran civilian scientist who'd apparently been working at the facility before the fighting started. She was terrified, unarmed, backed into a sealed section with no escape route, and Marcus's damaged combat implant kept flagging her as a threat. The tactical logic was straightforward. In hostile territory with compromised intelligence, you don't take chances with potential enemy assets. You neutralize threats before they compromise your position or alert enemies to your location. Marcus's training was clear. The galaxy's expectations were clear. Humans in these situations chose survival over mercy. That's what made them effective. They did what was necessary without hesitation. He raised his weapon, finger moving to the trigger. Kessa was begging in broken standard. She wasn't military, didn't know about the smuggling operation that had turned this research facility into a battlefield, was just doing atmospheric research when her world exploded into violence. Her pleas were irrelevant according to tactical protocols. His implant insisted she represented unacceptable risk. The galaxy expected him to pull the trigger. Marcus closed his eyes, trying to steady himself for what he believed he had to do. He'd killed before, but always in clear combat situations against armed enemies actively trying to kill him. This was different. This was a terrified civilian who might be connected to hostile forces, but who wasn't currently threatening him. Executing her felt less like combat and more like murder, but his tactical implant, damaged and glitching, insisted with increasing urgency that she was dangerous. His training said eliminate potential threats. Every story humans told themselves about what made them good soldiers said that sometimes you made hard choices that haunted you later. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Then something in his assessment shifted, not from the damaged implant, but from his own human intuition that the implant's conclusions were wrong. Kessa wasn't dangerous. She was a civilian caught in a war zone. His broken systems were interpreting her presence and her species' involvement in the facility as threat when she was actually just another victim of the same intelligence failure that got his unit killed. The galaxy expected him to pull the trigger. His damaged implant screamed at him to eliminate the threat. Every protocol said hesitation in hostile territory got you killed. But Marcus realized with sudden clarity that if he killed this terrified woman because his broken technology said she might be dangerous, he wasn't a soldier following necessary protocols. He was a murderer who let damaged equipment override his humanity. So he did something his tactical training said was insane, that the galaxy wouldn't expect, that went against every survival instinct. He lowered his weapon. He moved between Kessa and the corridor where enemy forces were approaching, using his own body as a shield. His implant screamed warnings about tactical suicide. His training said he was making fatal error. Marcus ignored both and prepared to defend her rather than eliminate her as a potential threat. "Stay behind me," he told Kessa in what he hoped was reassuring tone despite the pain from his injuries and the certainty that what he was doing would probably get him killed. "I've got you." The facility's security systems, still partially operational despite battle damage, recorded everything. The automated sensors that monitored combat zones, the surveillance equipment that multiple factions used to document battlefield behavior, all of them captured the moment when a human soldier, cornered and injured with every tactical reason to eliminate a potential threat, instead chose to protect her. The footage was stark and unambiguous. Marcus lowering his weapon, positioning himself between Kessa and danger, making himself the target instead of following protocols that said eliminate potential threats to ensure survival. Enemy forces reached their position. Marcus fought with the desperate efficiency of someone defending something more important than his own life. He took hits that would have killed Kessa if she'd been exposed, held position when retreat would have been tactically optimal for his personal survival. When rescue forces eventually reached the facility, human forces responding to his unit's distress call, they found Marcus critically injured and Kessa alive, because a human soldier had decided mercy mattered more than optimal survival tactics. The security footage spread through military intelligence networks with alarming speed, analyzed by strategists trying to understand why a human soldier deviated from expected tactical protocols. Then it spread further, into diplomatic channels, eventually public networks, becoming the kind of cross-species media event that happened when behavior dramatically contradicted established assumptions. The galaxy had spent decades understanding humans as the species who excelled at controlled violence, whose soldiers made hard tactical choices without hesitation, whose value in galactic military operations was their willingness to do what other species found morally difficult. And here was documented evidence of a human soldier, in exactly the situation where galactic expectations said humans chose survival over mercy, where every tactical protocol said eliminate potential threats, instead choosing to protect a potential enemy at tremendous personal cost. The response was complex and spanned species. Some military analysts argued Marcus's choice was tactical error resulting from damaged combat implants rather than deliberate moral decision. Others suggested it represented dangerous sentimentality that could compromise human effectiveness in future operations. But there was also widespread shock and reconsideration of assumptions. "We've been treating humans as if their capacity for violence defined them," a Valtheran diplomat observed during emergency session about the incident. "This suggests we've misunderstood something fundamental. If humans can choose mercy in circumstances where their own survival doctrines say violence is appropriate, then perhaps what makes them dangerous is more complex than we realized." Marcus himself, recovering from injuries sustained defending Kessa, became reluctant symbol of something galactic society hadn't fully processed about humanity. "I don't understand what the controversy is," he told investigators reviewing his actions. "She was a civilian. My damaged implant was giving me false threat assessments. Killing her would have been murder, not tactical necessity." "But your protocols—" "My protocols include human judgment. When technology contradicts what my eyes and brain tell me about a situation, I trust my judgment. She was terrified and unarmed. That's not a threat. That's someone who needs protection. Even when protecting her put your own survival at risk. Especially then, what's the point of surviving if you have to become someone you can't live with?" Kessa provided her own testimony to diplomatic forums investigating the incident. "The same human who could have killed me efficiently instead chose to protect me at near-fatal cost. That capacity for moral choice under extreme pressure is as significant as humans' capacity for violence, maybe more so, because violence without moral restraint is just destruction. Violence constrained by ethical frameworks represents something more trustworthy in allied forces." The footage of Marcus lowering his weapon continued to circulate, analyzed in context ranging from military ethics to xenopsychology to philosophy. The moment, a human soldier closing his eyes thinking he was going to kill, then opening them and choosing mercy instead, became symbol of something galactic society hadn't fully understood. That being capable of violence doesn't mean being defined by it. The aftermath forced conversations galactic military and diplomatic communities had been avoiding. Human combat effectiveness had been valued specifically because humans made hard tactical choices other species found morally difficult. Using human soldiers meant having forces who do what was necessary even when necessary meant violence other species hesitated to employ. Marcus's choice challenged that framework by demonstrating that humans' capacity for controlled violence included capacity to choose restraint, even when restraint carried enormous personal cost. The Terran Defense Forces faced difficult questions about combat implants that encouraged threat elimination over mercy. Marcus's damaged implant had insisted Kessa was dangerous based on fragmentary data, but his human judgment recognized she was a civilian victim rather than enemy asset. We need to reconsider how much tactical decision-making we outsource to systems that optimize for survival rather than moral considerations. The review board concluded. Technology should enhance human judgment, not override it. New protocols were developed emphasizing that combat implants provided information and recommendations, but final tactical decisions remained with human operators who could recognize contexts technology might miss. Marcus eventually returned to duty with modified role. He trained soldiers on importance of human judgment in tactical decisions, on recognizing when technology's threat assessments might be wrong, on understanding that sometimes the hardest choice was restraint rather than action. He maintained relationship with Kessa that transcended their combat meeting, not romantic, but built on profound recognition that she was alive, because he chose differently than galactic expectations said humans chose. And he survived because she refused to leave him when she could have fled. Years later, when asked about the incident, Marcus's explanation was characteristically straightforward. I closed my eyes thinking I was going to kill her because that's what I thought being a good soldier required. Then I realized being a good soldier includes being a good human, and good humans don't kill terrified civilians just because damaged technology says they might be threats. The galaxy expected me to pull the trigger. I'm glad I disappointed those expectations. The story spread throughout human space and beyond, becoming parable about moral courage coexisting with combat capability. It didn't fundamentally change humanity's reputation as effective soldiers. Humans remained the species other civilizations called when violence was necessary. But it added complexity to that reputation, acknowledgement that humans' capacity for violence was constrained by moral frameworks that could override survival instincts. What makes humans truly dangerous? A prominent xenopsychologist wrote in widely read analysis, isn't their aggression but their unpredictable tendency to choose mercy when violence would be tactically optimal. A species that can't be counted on to follow expected patterns of violence is more complex and potentially more trustworthy than one that simply excels at controlled destruction. The human who closed his eyes expecting to kill instead opened them and chose differently. That choice recorded, witnessed, spread across space, challenged everything the galaxy thought it understood about what humans do in moments when violence seems inevitable. And perhaps that unpredictability, that capacity to surprise with mercy when violence is expected, represented humanity's most significant contribution to galactic civilization. Not that